The struggle to create YouTube, algorithm, and AI. How can you grow as a creator just starting out on YouTube? How can you find your own voice that effectively communicates your message? YouTube, which talks about creators, is it really a platform that empowers creation? And more specifically, authenticity, in times when artificial intelligence has begun to be used massively to generate content? As the perfectionist that I am, and before getting down to work, I set out to study. Watching videos, of course, to understand how to grow on this platform. In this video, I'll tell you what I discovered and what my conclusion was. The viral strategy of mass content. I started my research looking into how to publish on YouTube and also strategies to create a successful channel. After watching some videos, one appeared in my suggestions about a guy under 20 years old who was making thousands of dollars monthly with YouTube Shorts. I dedicated myself to watching the complete video, in which he showed a series of YouTube buttons for each of the channels he had. He didn't even remember how many there were anymore. When it ended, I was left with mixed feelings. On one hand, I admired his strategy, discipline, and clarity about the YouTube game. But on the other hand, I was disturbed by the emotional disconnection he seemed to have with his content, and how he expressed himself about his projects from a very business-like perspective, analytical about trends and strategic approaches oriented exclusively toward generating viral videos and therefore generating profits. This strategy had evidently worked for him, as he even showed evidence of these earnings on the platform. The YouTube algorithm trap. As I continue watching more videos, I began to see how my recommendations list started filling up with similar suggestions, but from different creators. Systems to reach a certain number of subscribers overnight. Rules that if you follow them to the letter, you would definitely succeed on this platform. Titles like, "Follow these 5 steps and you'll succeed on YouTube." From 1 to 1,000 subscribers in record time. Earn X money in less than 3 months, or the variations, flooded my suggested list. It was then when, after being a YouTube user for many years, I began to realize that both the thumbnail's structure and advice given by these creators were very similar. Too similar between different creators. As a comedian from my country would say, suspicious stuff. It was then that I asked myself, who among all these people was really the first one to say this? Because I don't believe they all express themselves in such a similar way. Then I found another creator. I liked his simple and natural way of addressing the camera. Plus, he was very clear in speaking and gave very good advice. As I continued browsing through his channel videos and even subscribed, I came across a video where he told how he had been uploading content for several years. That he had gone through different niches or themes, but only recently had he begun to have more massive success. The reason? One of his channel's videos received a lot of attention, and from there he decided that all his content would start revolving around that central theme, and therefore producing related videos. So rather than deciding to focus his channel on what really moved him, he focused his efforts specifically on the good reception of one particular video. This began to give me mixed feelings because I could understand that part of a good sales strategy is finding something a buyer wants to buy, but in this case, it wasn't his first pivot from what I understood. He had gone through many niches throughout these years. And for me, that targeting effort based exclusively on what worked for him in our particular video was like watching someone throw many coins in the air, observe which one or ones are picked up by the most people, and then start minting them in bulk. Despite this, I continue watching content from his channel until I reach that video. That video that changed my vision of what it means to be a content creator on YouTube. The video in which my admiration for this YouTuber, whose channel I started following because his information was clear, useful, and enjoyable, begins to talk about how one of his most successful videos takes inspiration from successful YouTubers from English language channels and then brought that content to Spanish. I frowned a bit and stayed thinking, how? While he continued animatedly narrating and even showing one of his favorite books, Still Like an Artist, where supposedly it talked about how ultimately nothing is original and everything is a copy of everything. Yes, I understand that 100% original doesn't exist, since we all have influences, references, etc. And I also understand that the idea from someone else's video can give us an idea for another topic. Or I can even take the same idea but talk about it from a particular point of view. But I refuse to believe that book teaches that to create you have to do what he explained, which to me wasn't inspiration as he indicated, but practically an exact copy of the original video. Same title, same central idea, even the same facial expression in the thumbnail. And yes, his formula worked and had attracted many people to his channel, including me. That's when I realized I myself had fallen into the YouTube algorithm. And for YouTube, I was a satisfied visitor because I clicked on a suggestion and watched the entire 20-minute video from a channel I was already subscribed to. Therefore, that video is worth suggesting to more and more people. So views and subscribers of this creative creator will continue increasing. YouTube Studio. Inspiration or prefab mold for production line? And since I was still in study mode, I continued navigating through the vastness of the YouTube sea. That's when I found a very interesting talk by a platform content advisor. I learned several interesting things. And it was in this talk where the professional actually talked about this problem. That unfortunately, there's a lot of copying on YouTube. Blatant copies of original material. Although YouTube so far is clear that it doesn't take action about it. For some reason, it allows this type of content to continue circulating on the platform. Why? To me, because it already has a captive audience, ads were enabled, and therefore it's generating profits for the platform. This same consultant talked about the news for YouTube looking toward the future. That's when I heard for the first time about Inspire section, which is found within YouTube Studio. That is, the space where the creator uploads their videos, and among others, also has access to a series of analytics that provide very useful information regarding the number of views, where people come from, what type of device they use, etc., which effectively serves to understand the audience and be able to give them a better experience. It's in YouTube Studio where you access Inspire, which when loading shows you ideas for your next video inspired by your channel. And I, with a single published video at the time, was able to try it myself. And it's actually quite impressive at first glance. What Inspire does is analyze the channel content or in my case, my first video, and propose 5 video ideas I could explore. For example, what I learned from a year of creative silence, redefining success in a creative life, my anti-routine for sustainable creative flow, deconstructing the myth of the effortless genius in creative fields, and the invisible power of daily creative acts. I repeat, all ideas based on the topics I covered in that first video. And then, when selecting any of the suggested ideas, 2 large sections appear. Hooks, where you structure the first part of the video, generating an intriguing question, bold statement and personal revelation, and a relatable struggle and promise. And then another section, which is called outline, where a kind of a skeleton unfolds within which ideas can be developed. Authenticity or the YouTube success formula? Once again, mixed feelings. On one hand, amazement, a bit like when I started chatting with some of the AIs. On the other, the world of possibilities that open up for me to explore angles of an idea that I really hadn't initially thought of. But after a while, that feeling of amazement and excitement at seeing the intelligence of the tool began to transform into a not very pleasant sensation. First, because little by little, it began to make sense in my mind. Everything I had been reviewing from other creators up to that point, and how this format was consonant with those ideas. That ultimately this tool provides a guide, a certain format to follow, which is being suggested by YouTube, is because precisely it has detected that this is the pattern used by the channels and therefore the most viewed videos of its creators. This pattern recommended to try to retain the new visitor through this tool promises to help precisely with this, to hook the visitor to your video, trying not to let them escape in this new reality where everything must be delivered quickly, in the blink of an eye. Otherwise, the visitor will simply swipe the finger on the app and move on to the next content. It was here that I asked myself, but is this really inspiration? My analysis, on one hand, yes, because effectively a topic can be broken down and deepened later, but on the other hand, discomfort when concluding that this tool that practically leaves everything ready to be able to create a new video was going to be unsure is being used to create mass content thanks to AI tools. I could clearly see in my mind's eye how those who use AI 100% to create content had here another tool that would allow them to create videos in production line fashion, while those of us who decide to write on our own lines or speak our words directly could generate at most 1 video or 2 per week, given all the work behind it. How I used AI to find my voice. And so now, while I write these words, and having realized the structure suggested by YouTube Inspire, I have a strange feeling, to call it somehow. And it's that now, every time I enter a new video, I begin to see how the vast majority effectively uses this pattern. This kind of prefab mold oriented to fit into what in theory seems to be the success format as a content creator on YouTube. So I think about my first video and I realize it doesn't have this format at all. But nevertheless, for me it was an enormous achievement to have been able to materialize my scattered ideas into something tangible. And of course, my first video may have many errors and not be optimized at all to hook the audience, to increase retention, ultimately increasing the possibilities of generating views and new subscribers. But those words are my words, my thoughts, which at that moment were gushing out, at times disorganized, at times extended, repetitive, boring, as we would say colloquially, kind of rambling, without having a clear direction of what I wanted to transmit. But thinking about it, I tell myself, well, that's also me when speaking. The one who goes around in circles, jumps from one topic to another, all over the place, but wanting to express what I think and feel. Doesn't that also have as much or more value than following a predefined pattern in order to increase the possibilities of being prioritized by YouTube's algorithm? And my mind keeps spinning and trying to answer the questions that arise. What's more important at this moment for me? Focusing 100% on expression, but risking that my message ultimately doesn't reach anyone because it doesn't comply with the structure sponsored by YouTube algorithm? Or trying to fit within that template, giving up my own ideas, words, what really makes me be me, a unique and individual person, unreplicable, well, at least for now, because with how fast AI is advancing, we're closer to mental cloning than physical cloning. And here I find myself with you at these crossroads. Because if you've reached this point in the video, it means something about this also resonates with you. And I ask you then, what would you do? Choose the full authenticity option, total freedom without structure or molds. Try to fit exactly into the structure in order to increase the possibilities of spreading your message, or perhaps a mix of both. And what would you think if I told you that actually I've already made my decision? And you've been witness to it since you started playing this video? Yes, just as you heard it, this video is the result of my final decision. Now I'll explain why. The Claude AI question that changed everything. With all the information I had managed to gather in my research, I reached a point of no return. What was learned was already learned. This format, this structure proposed by YouTube to generate content. Now the idea was to see what I could do with this information. And guess who helped me channel my decision? An artificial intelligence, Claude. After my first video, in which I worked hand in hand with various AIs, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and Claude, I started my work for this second video directly with Claude. I opted for the latter because I felt that the previous time, speaking directly to it, it was the one that most respected my individuality and my own voice. What do I mean by that? That without needing to make a detailed prompt, that is, a detailed and guided instruction to interact with an AI, this artificial intelligence by default has a much more neutral approach. It doesn't praise you as much as ChatGPT, for example. Therefore, I thought I could get more grounded feedback, so to speak. Particularly in my case, given that once I start my ideas, they begin to get disorganized, wanting to cover everything at once, without a clear focus. I precisely became aware of this thanks to Claude's help. How? It directly told me within the conversation, "You're getting scattered." Then asking me, What's the central idea you want to transmit with this? I was there, super happy with Claude, just like when I work with some other AI, since I feel it's like having a teacher by your side who will always have an answer for you. And so the conversation with Claude progressed until we reached my question about how I could do it to generate content in the best way on the YouTube platform. And can you believe that the response it gave me was a proposal with a format very similar to YouTube Inspire, which obviously I didn't like at all from the start, since my idea was to have a guide, but leaving me quite a bit of creative freedom and not once again proposing this kind of template. Honestly, I didn't know what to do. Let myself be advised by Claude or not, but if I did, how could I avoid losing my own voice? The conversation progressed and faced with my objection because it totally changed the structure of my script to this format. Claude responded, "Your conflict is completely valid. Indeed, my restructuring falls into the patterns you yourself identified as copied. The accelerated rhythm, the direct promises, the formulaic hooks. It's a standard YouTube language." That was the answer from Claude. And then it asks me the question I had also begun to ask myself. The key question: do you want to adapt your message to the mainstream YouTube format or find the format that enhances your natural voice? AI helps me make my decision as a content creator. There I was, trapped, stuck, unable to move forward once again, unable to start my second video. Now because I was in full debate with Claude about having to fit into this YouTube-optimized mold. I stared at the screen, thinking about what I really wanted to do. After a while, I took a deep breath, and still with doubts, not 100% convinced yet, I began to type my response to Claude. "Look, at these moments, and given my whole process that I shared with you in video 1, what I want is to do things. And for the same reason, I want to write, because I enjoy it. And since I also like to learn, I find it interesting to learn this YouTube video structure, but then to use it in my own way." That was my response to Claude. And what does doing it my way mean? It means using AI tools as support for creation, as a guide, but not as a sort of copy-paste to generate content. Whether it's Claude AI, ChatGPT, YouTube Inspire, using them as tools that help me organize my ideas, channel them. Tools that suggest new points of view to me, but from ideas that are born from me, where ultimately I have the power to decide which suggestion I receive makes sense to me or not. And regarding that structure, that mold or pattern that initially bothered me so much, I began to look at it differently. Thinking, for example, about writers. I thought, don't writers first have to learn the basic structures, molds of writing, depending on the literary genre they write? Those who study journalism, don't they also have to learn and align within a certain format in order to better deliver their message? I also thought about the figure of editors, who help the writer be able to transmit their ideas better. In the end, I thought, actually for me, what's important now is more than the structure or wanted to fit into this mold for YouTube. What I want is to learn by doing. Adapt to this format within my own limits that I don't want to compromise. Learn the rule first, so as the saying goes, then know how to break them, and go finding my own and unique voice along the way. So that's what I did. In work sessions, hand in hand with Claude, I've managed to channel my ideas and thoughts, which are coming to an end for today. What do you think of my approach that you've been witnessed in this video? Can you detect this kind of template in this video, or do you think it actually seems to flow naturally? Well, I leave you with those questions. It's kind of late over here, and soon I'll go to rest. And I'll do it with the satisfaction of having been able to, at least today, materialize, get out, express myself, which has been my longed for need throughout these years, which little by little I'm beginning to materialize. Originality with AI? Your opinion counts. I'm just starting this path. I don't know what the future holds for me, nor where this boat of creation hand in hand with AI will take me. Maybe a month from now, a year from now, I'll completely change my mind about this. Maybe I'll even regret this decision. But you know what? I know I would regret more having stayed in decision paralysis, in perfectionism and rigidity, and not having done absolutely nothing. At least I'm going to try, even if I make mistakes along the way. At least I have the peace of mind of thinking that this decision is the one I consider best for me today. And you? Do you think YouTube fosters originality on this platform? Or does it privilege the reach of creators' messages over their originality? On the other hand, do you think these AI tools can really help create from originality? And if so, have you already tried anything? And in what area? If you want to share your experience with me, I'm gladly going to read you. Greetings and see you in the next video.